recording? Yes, I think we are recording. All right, just riding the bike home from the dealer, or from the tuner. We're gonna see how it feels. So in the cruising range, we had it pretty close. We did have some lean conditions in the at 100% throttle, which we knew from when I had it on Kent's dyno. And so I'd added some more fuel, but it still needed some more, and then I added too much in another area. So now we're dialed in from 80% throttle. You know, in the cruising range, everything's good enough. Now I will say at idle, it is still lean, and this is a problem with Tune ECU. We have removed the O2 sensors. They are gone. They're disabled. They're unplugged. The ECU has no way of knowing what's going on with the tuning. We've got SAI blocked, turned off in software, and physically blocked. So O2 is physically removed, and SAI is blocked. So what else? Well, we have we got it all tuned up. Now on his dyno, as you see in the other video where we've got the dyno pulls and stuff, he uses a Factory Pro. It's a different kind of dyno. It measures horsepower different. It has different calculations on how it derives horsepower. None of that matters as far as tuning goes. As far as the tunes go, you know, the motor is either happy or it's not. You tune until it makes max power and you get your air-fuel ratio. So, but it does measure horsepower different. And you can watch the other video at the end of the dyno runs. You know, Charles is explaining why Factory Pro is different. But at the end of the day, they're going to give you the same result as far as the tune goes. But when you look at the number, you're going to go, hey, 90.7 sounds low. It does. You have to take that number and multiply it by 1.15. Basically, a Factory Pro, and this actually bears out, because if you take that number and you multiply it, you know, add 15% to it, it comes up to within 1.5 horsepower of what we got on the DynoJet dyno last weekend, or no, 2 weekends ago. So right now at the wheel, peak horsepower, we're making, depending on the dyno and the day, 103 to 105 at the wheel. It's making great power. We picked up a couple horsepower 2.3 in the mid-range where it was a little bit, you know, lean, but now it is running happy. So pulls hard. And what was also really cool to see on the dyno was just how hard it pulled. There was no sign-off. Normally you look at the power graph and it goes up. You hit your peak somewhere, usually like 1,000 before redline. And that's the same way, or sometimes 2,000, depending on what they're doing to restrict it. But typically on bikes, you look and you say, yeah, it revs out to 16.5. Yeah, but peak horsepower might be at 15 or 15.2 or 14.5. And it'll still rev out that high, but it loses power the more you rev it. This it slows down the rate of increase, but it is increasing power right to the rev limiter. It pulls right into it, and not and then into it. It pulls into it. That's a good motor. That's a good tune. The ignition advance, the tuning, the mods, the holding the throttle plates open all the way to redline has taken and moved the peak power from down around 7,000, and it's not only increased power everywhere, but it's actually moved the peak where it hits peak power, it's moved it up right to redline. So people that think, those throttle restrictions, the ETB, it's not really making a difference, it's in your head. No, it's not. Had it on 2 different dynos, 3, my butt dyno. Been doing this long enough, I kind of know when it feels more. But then also having it on not only 2 different dynos, but 2 different type of dynos. Both of them showed, while the numbers were different, that's okay. Both of them showed that the max power was moved up. And we are making now more at the wheel than this bike is supposed to make at the crank stock, or not stop. So I'm really, really happy with this thing. It's just purring. Now, I'll tell you, here's the one issue we ran into. This is not a tuner issue. It's something with Tune ECU. And I'm going to try to get to the bottom of it for you folks. But there is something going on that either Tune ECU either has a glitch and it's broken, or the authors of Tune ECU are putting this in there specifically. Maybe they're worried about getting sued, like Harley and DynoJet and all the diesel companies and, you know, all that stuff. All the people that are doing tuning getting sued by the EPA and shit. Maybe they're monkeying around. You know, they're saying, look, in the areas where the testing's typically done, you can put whatever you want in there. It's not going to change anything. And so we noticed that. When we went into the F tables, down around idle, I'd already added 20% fuel with the X pipe and all that stuff. He goes and adds, he's like, it's still crazy lean down there. It's running like 15.5 or something. So he goes and he runs more in there. No difference. Sorry, dicking around. This Mustang did sound good though. So anyway, what was I saying before I started riding like an idiot? So he added he added 20% more fuel. So we've added 40%. Zero difference at idle. Made no change to the fuel and to the emissions. So we're like, okay, let's go over to the L tables. Maybe it's pulling because there's an FL switch on Tune ECU for Triumph. Sometimes it's going to pull from the fuel tables, which is throttle position and RPM. Other times it's going to pull from RPM and vacuum pressure. So like we'll go to the N tables. Let's add 20% in the L tables. Reflash the ECU. Idle. No difference at all. So then we're like, all right, let's put it back to stock. L table fueling. No difference. There's a lot of back and forth. Every time we flash it, it's 18 minutes. So we're like, all right, we're here. We're going to do it. We're going to make it. We're going to be thorough. So then what happened was we go into that and we say, all right, maybe we're reading it wrong because it's not like there's any goddamn documentation on this shit. So let's go into the L tables and let's assume we're going in the wrong direction. Let's take out whatever those numbers are because, you know, with the fuel tables, that number correlates to how much fuel the injectors are going to pulse and squirt in there. You add more 10% to the number, you get more fuel, and you adjust your air-fuel ratio and your power changes. Oh, this thing does pull nice, man. And so we go ahead and we were like, all right, let's go in the other direction. Figuring if we're right, it'll improve. If we're wrong, it'll make it worse. Pulled out 15% to an already lean condition just to see if it would go crazy lean. Made no difference. So there was something going on, and I ran into this with my other Triumph Euro 4 bike, which was the Street Triple RS. The 2020 was the first of the Euro 5 bikes. We ran into the same goddamn problem with Tune ECU and tuning that, where we could not get idle. We could tune the bike itself. The rest of the bike, man, it was running great, the horsepower. But when we got down to the idle area, I got some water in here, but this is more about the audio. It did not. We could not get the Street Triple RS 765 for 2020. We could not get idle to run right. It was running like at 18 because we did a DCAT and that Kropovich and a high flow filter and stuff. And that bike was running an air-fuel ratio around 18. It was dangerously lean. The only way we got it fixed was installing a power commander. L tables, F tables, tuned most of the bike, but not around idle. And that is exactly what's going on with this bike, which is also Euro 5. It's 2022. No matter what changes we made, it did literally nothing in the idle area. If you go from stock and you get an air-fuel ratio reading, and then you add 25% more fuel, and it doesn't even budge a tenth, and then you go 15% less than the stock, so that's a 40% in the 25, and then negative in the other. So that's a 40% difference, and it doesn't make any difference on the gas readings. And that's steady state. It's not like, oh, we're doing a sweep and it's a guesstimate. He's holding it at every RPM range You know, and it's just sitting there, and especially, well, I guess at idle that wouldn't come into play, but, you know, it's just sitting there, and he's got O2 sensors plugged into the headers. You're going to get the best reading from there, not the sniffer up the tailpipe, but he put O2 bungs and welded them into the damn header pipes. Made a 40% swing in fuel at idle on both the F tables and the L tables, and nothing changed at all. It's not like, oh, it changed a little bit, but not enough. It didn't do anything. So all I can assume at this point is there's a reason. And the software is either broken in that area, which seems odd because it's been that way for 2 years. My feeling personal, and I'll see if I can get an answer, but I don't think they're going to cop to it. They're going to fess up. I believe that the writers of Tune ECU are worried about getting their asses sued, and they go, look, down low at idle, that's where maybe a bunch of countries do their emissions testing, not under load at a certain speed. So yeah, we'll let you tune it up there, but any of the areas where the government's going to be testing, you can do whatever you want in there. It's not going to make a change. Now, where I would take issue with Tune ECU, which I understand, if you're trying to, you know, if it's liability and you're trying to, you know, you don't have, this is a guy writing the program and selling it for $30. He's not DynoJet. DynoJet got a $9 million fine from the EPA in California. This guy doesn't have that kind of money. This would bankrupt him. Then just gray those areas out. Say, look, you could tune all of this, but this area is left to stay within compliance with the EU or CARB in California or whatever. And it just is what it is. I don't like that they're keeping us from tuning that area, but not admitting it. Just admit it, dude. Say, look, I don't want to get my ass sued. You can tune the bike where it matters, and frankly is, you know, running an air-fuel ratio of 15 or whatever. Yeah, that's high. 15.5 is high. But you're at idle. The engine's not under load. You're not going to get any kind of pre-ignition or pinging or anything like that. And how often are you just sitting there idling for any real length of time? Well, when it's warming up or you're sitting at a stoplight, if you're sitting anywhere for more than 2 or 3 minutes, you're probably shutting the bike off anyway. So I told Charles, we're going to try to get to the bottom of it, but I'm not worried about it. I said, after flashing the ECU 5 times and going through all the tests and nothing changed, I was like, you know what, dude, just screw it. The cruising range is good. There's no surging. Throttle's instant and snappy. It hits hard. There's no lag. There's no lulls. And up top, we picked up some horsepower. We got it smoothed out. That aero-fuel ratio was like 12.9 to 13.1 all the way up from 80%, 90%, and 100% throttle, which is where you're on your power. You know, that's where you're trying to go fast. You're giving it full throttle or near through full throttle. I said, that's the most important part of the range. Let's make sure we get that perfect. And now it is. So this bike is now making 103 to 105 at the wheel, low 80s for torque, fueling spot on when you get on the gas and when you're cruising down the road. It still runs a little lean at idle, whatever. It's not going to hurt anything, and we'll figure it out at some point. But that's what you got. Now, I did have a wrench flashing before, and I thought something I needed to clear a code. Apparently, that was from it being on the dyno. Even though we had traction control off, I guess the ABS, it didn't throw a code, but the ABS did throw a wrench saying, hey, something's not working. But on the ride over here, that wrench turned off. So that's good. All right, so I'm going to get home, clean this up a little bit. Hopefully not too much road slop. It's more mist than anything, but that's what we got. I'll post up a video of the dyno run and talking to Charles. That should already be up by the time you're watching this. And we'll talk to everybody from Dave's garage later. And folks that have a same setup, reach out to me. We'll talk about some tuning. Sounds good. That'll do, pig. That'll do.